Today we'll be diving into drawings. I dedicated this one to drawings because the last time we did drawings was quite a while ago specifically. So I wanted to kind of update everyone on what's been going on the past, I'd say 2-3 years since we did. It was about 3.5 years since we did the last drawings um, webinar. So this is webinar number 64 for our Fusion Fridays is what we used to call it, but it's our Autodesk Virtual Academy that we have every once a month on Fridays. And there's a lot of changes that have been done in the drawing environment, as you may already know. So I kind of want to dedicate this one to those who have been using drawings but don't know what's really new in the past 2 years, because Autodesk has been throwing a lot of investments and a lot of great technology at Fusion. So I'll go ahead and get right into it. So I did do it what's new with Marty Deans from Autodesk and the April Autodesk Virtual Academy for Fridays that I'm going to post in the chat room here. So go ahead and check that out. And that one is what's new, not only on drawings, but we covered, Marty covered manufacturing. I covered other aspects of Fusion from January to April of 2021. I am going to go over smart templates. You see how I crossed out slope symbols and break view there. You can definitely check those out in that link I just sent out. But smart templates is huge and it's really quick and automated. So I wanted to go over that real quick today. But what I also wanted to go over in that list down below there are a lot of features that I know a lot of them didn't exist in Fusion 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They probably came in the past 2 years or so. So I wanted to go into some of these, kind of like being able to creating sketches was a huge one. That one came out a while ago, but it was relatively newer. So I wanted to dive into some of that, some automatic whole call outs, which is really cool, and when it works, when it doesn't work. Things like putting in symbols. It doesn't have every symbol in the book inside of Fusion 360. So I wanted to go into just a general session of, hey, here's someone working in the drawing environment for 15-20 minutes, and here's what you can take out of it. And I wanted to just educate everyone on that. So definitely leave comments, questions in the chat room, and I'm more than happy to dive right into it. That's the benefits of this being live after all. So let's go ahead and pull up Fusion here. So the first thing on that list was the smart templates that was covered in the April webinar. But I wanted to kind of put a little twist on it. There's a sheet metal part to it as well, but so let's go ahead and create a new smart template. So essentially, new drawing template here. So essentially, it's a template that it's like a title block that automatically populates in Fusion, but it actually is it automates your drawing view insertions as well and parts lists as well. So we can go ahead and create one from scratch. It'll be B-size. And so here's what I did last time. I created an assembly representation. So if you build assemblies, then this is for you. However, if you build sheet metal components, you have the option for folded component and or flat pattern that it could come in as. So let's go ahead and choose folded component. And this is a random part that they're using as representation here that is representing our folded component. So I'll go ahead and place that there. Place some views. Top, front, side views. Sure. Move this down, put that into a good spot. So that's a folded view of a sheet metal box. We can bring in a parts list and note, since it's a folded part, okay, that's fine here. But when we create the flat pattern sheet, it's going to create the bend parts list, not just the a regular parts list like this, I guess like a bend table. So this is all set up and good to go, like you might have remembered from the last session. But if we go over here to our second sheet, we can maybe put our flat pattern in here, for example. So we'll put in another base, and instead of an assembly, will be flat pattern. Go ahead and place it there. We'll show the thickness in that view, for example. And here's where we bring in another table. And this shows, for example, the different bends that it could come in as, right? So once we have that, we can go ahead and save these two. And you want to save it in the same project folder, the templates, in order to detect it immediately, or else you can go look for it and browse for it. Maybe create your own dedicated templates folder or project even. But I'll just call this sheet metal test 1. And this is going into my webinar 64 folder. So I have that ready to go. So now let's go ahead and get a sheet metal part. Here's just a quick, this is not really a drawing tip, but this is just a searching tip. So I have a bunch of Fusion Fridays folders, obviously here, and I need to find my sheet metal webinar because I want to use a sheet metal example. What we can do is just go to search here, and I'm going to type in sheet metal as keywords to find the naming of my part file. And I found some templates that I've created already to test for this, but I also found some part files that I made for this. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of these examples there. So that's just a nice little tool I like to use. So now that we have this sheet metal part, let's go ahead and create a drawing for it with that template we just created. File, drawing from design. And we will do the full assembly here, and the template will be, we'll go ahead and browse for it. 64 sheet metal test that we just created. Okay. And I want to point out that it is going to run to an error. And I don't know if this is just a bug that's because this is a pretty new tool. But it didn't, if you see these two red boxes here, it didn't quite bring in the flat pattern correctly in that view. So let me show you what we have here. So the first page, we have our sheet metal box, and it brought in the front, the base view, I guess maybe a bottom or top view, side view, and the isometric view, and it brought in the parts list. That's great. The flat pattern table didn't come in as expected, so I would have to redo this. And then it created this again for some reason. But however, it did create the flat pattern correctly on this fourth page here. So there's a little bit of bugging that needs to be fixed here, but once it's up and running, you can do this for flat pattern. And you can see the bend table that's created for this sheet metal box example that I brought in. So if you use sheet metal, this is something you don't have to keep repetitively having to create, which is, the front side views, flat patterns of it. It'll save you, a couple minutes each template, which if you create 3 to 5 different drawings a day, that'll save probably upwards of close to an hour of time just doing templates all day long. So that definitely is something I would take a look at if you do repetitive drawings during your day-to-day. The second item on the list here is, and if you want to see an assembly be made, you can check out the April AVA. So the second item on the list here is changing the font display. So what if you have a display that you want to show kind of both of your both inches and millimeters or metric in your drawing? I know we're working with some customers that actually need to show both. So let me go ahead and first go to create a drawing for this bracket here. And I won't use the sheet metal. We'll just do a plain blank drawing here. All right, so let's go ahead and create a dimension for it. So right now it's just 4, and we are in inches, but if we go ahead and click on the dimension, you can turn on alternate units. and that will show the millimeters in the parentheses next to it. However, if you want to indicate that this is actually 4 inches, where you can go to do that is you would navigate to the preferences at your icon here at the top right. And there's a drawing option here where you can override the defaults of what options you have here, and you can display dimension units. Keep in mind, it didn't change it right away. And even if I delete the dimension and create it again, it still doesn't show it. So what needs to happen is you would actually want to close out of the drawing, and so you'd want to essentially have that set up before creating the drawing. So it's not the most intuitive right off the bat, but I just want to let you know how it's done and why it didn't update right away. So if I go back to this bracket and let me close out of this drawing, let me go to this bracket and create a new drawing from it. So it's not perfect, but it still gives you the option to show it. So now you can see that it shows the inches there, and if you want to create the millimeters for or the second units next to it, you have to do this each time, which is going in and checking that box. But at least you can get, at least the option does exist. It might be more manual adding this millimeters, but it's just a quick open and checking the box. All right. All right, next is preferences and document settings. So if we take a look at, we were looking at preferences just a minute there. But if we go under document settings as well, you have the options to editing the fonts of your model here. If the company uses a specific font, you can make the changes here as well. There's a lot hidden under here if you didn't know. They can modify the size without having to dig into other folders. It's here at a higher level. Just wanted to point that out as I was digging through what's different here in the drawing environment. There's a lot more to it here that you can make the changes to. And another, so let's go into the next example here, which is the extending center lines and center marks. So what happens when, and this happened to me many times earlier on, is when I create a center line in Fusion, but it was too short and it just looked very not professional and not ready to deliver. So let me create a projected view here. And I know center lines maybe are associated also with cylindrical holes and things like that. But just bear with me with this example here. So if we just use the center line tool and we choose maybe this line and this line, like that's a decent center line. Sometimes it's like it comes in smaller or something like that, and it's not something that I would want. Like I want to extend it now. But if you play around with this, you can actually, like I was just doing just a moment ago, you can actually tug on this line and make it longer to kind of go to the extents of your model the way you'd kind of expect it or want it to be, while still being associated to those two lines, which is really nice. If you do move it off, it will give you a warning of having to reassociate the center line. So you can just go ahead and reassociate that with that line and that line there just to bring it back into perspective. Or if for whatever reason you wanted maybe a center line that had only one dash in it, or you wanted a different font, maybe you even want a hidden line here for whatever reason, you have the option. I'm getting into my next point here of using a sketch to satisfy that that flexibility that you need, that more niche control. So if you go over here to create sketch, all right, it's not going to show me that, but you have the option under the sketching environment to do anything you want. But essentially, if you wanted to create, let's create a line to replace that there. And we can start using different constraints and things like that, like midpoint constraints. That is not straight. Sorry, let me do that one more time. Tab 90, no. I'm gonna turn off the grid in the background here. See if it'll allow me to create a straight line. The tab is not working, so if anyone knows why or how to define that degree there, because I was getting this. Okay, I'll just create it like that for now. So essentially you have the option with the sketch with the line tool in the drawing environment to, right now it's a continuous line, it's just a straight line. You have the option here to choose a center line, to choose a center two line. I wish they had a couple more, like maybe AutoCAD kind of lines, but yeah, you do have more options here, and you have the flexibility to create whatever lines you want. So from continuous, I'm going to change this to center two, for example, and it can create that, maybe just that one dash that I was looking for or something like that. Now it's giving me the straight line there. So you have the options there. Again, if you wanted a hidden line, you can change it to that as well. Doesn't make as much sense in this scenario. And once you get out of it, it's going to show you that line. But I would just be cautious when using that because it's not associative with the model. This is just happens to just be there because the associativity that the center line brings to the table is it goes in between two different edges. So just keep that in mind when using sketches. So use it sparingly is what I'm saying. All right, and then automatic hole and thread bend notes. So I'm not sure when the last time you used or started calling out holes, but there is the ability to call out exactly the holes without having to type it in. So it could do the work for us. So if I go back here to my bracket, you can see that these holes are just holes. They weren't created with the hole tool. So let me go ahead and throw in a hole tool over this, for example. And yeah, we'll throw in a hole tool. So it's actually defined down here, the design history by hole. I'll go ahead and save that. Go ahead and take a look at our bracket again, and we'll go ahead and update that. So now we can see obviously that one was the hole tool and this one is not. So if we try to call it out, let me use the hole and thread note tool here. If I try to call out this hole, it's not even highlighting for me to select this. It's just not giving me an option to, because it was created through an extrude cut. It wasn't created through a hole tool, or maybe it was a step file. But with this edge, I am able to select the hole because it was created with the hole tool. Fusion's smart enough to detect that, and then when I drop it in, it could show us the diameter and how deep it was cut through, which is essentially through all. But yeah, so yeah, keep that in mind. You can't use the hole tool if it's just like a extruded cut hole. Essentially, you would have to go to use a regular leader note and call it out yourself manually with these symbols and such. So just a quicker way to access the hole tools and to call out your holes is to use the hole tool. All right, and then another thing is inserting symbols that don't exist. Like I was saying earlier, Fusion doesn't have the entire library under its environment here. So if we go ahead and navigate to this leader here, we go into symbols. There's like a good amount of symbols, right? But if we navigate, I have Inventor here that I'll go ahead and drag on over. And Inventor has been around a little bit longer, so they might have a little bit more, a lot more mature of a drawing environment. Fusion is definitely catching up though. But if we take a look at some of the symbols here, there's not many more. There's only a couple more, like this U, for example, with the circle. They go in and add that. what you can do if you do have Inventor is you can just copy this, Control C, and just paste it into, move this out of the way, paste this into Fusion like so. And then you can change the font if it's too big. Oops, that was changing the the actual symbol. There you go. Highlight it, and then you can change the font, for example. So yeah, that's one way to go about it. And most of the what you can copy and paste from just doing a Google search of the symbol that you want, you can bring in and just essentially just paste it in here. Anything on your keyboard that you can type actually comes in here as well. And another interesting thing is if you try to bring in like if I'm doing shift exclamation mark, that's shift exclamation mark. If I do shift at, it actually brings in an F, the F, like the symbol here. If I do shift hashtag, it's going to bring in this side by side left to right arrow here, etc., etc. So if you there's some hot keyboard shortcuts to getting to some of these tools actually. So if you don't want to dig into this, you can use your keyboard shortcuts and you can play around with inserting different symbols that you might use more often than not. So, all right. And just one more thing, if I wanted to bring in the company logo here, this is something I covered, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste this into the chat room. But essentially, that is custom title blocks. So instead of having to populate this every time, you have the option to save it, just like I did with the sheet metal template. So you don't have to redundantly put in an image, give it a certain name, or a certain if you have to insert tolerance text every time, you don't have to do that. So let me go ahead and copy and paste that AVA into the chat room. So that one is the webinar on custom title blocks, to which will help fulfill the last tip there. I just want to kind of branch you off into different learning routes. Just know that some of these other resources exist. I don't want to have to show it all in one. I want to be able to give you more knowledge outside of just this one webinar. So yeah, and if you don't want to use that link and you're watching this on YouTube later on, you can go to do a YouTube search of custom title blocks, and you can type in AVA and KETIV, which is our company here. So that's it. I wanted to just give a quick run through and update of what I find is useful and is relatively quote unquote new inside of the Fusion 360 drawings environment. So I'm happy now to open the floor up for any questions you may have, or any comments of what you'd want to see moving forward. Next week or next month, I am planning on going over starting from scratch, creating tool pads for a router that I actually have here at home, a wood cutting router, and we can go through the start to finish, essentially, all the way out to the post for that. And then the following week, I plan to work, or the following month, sorry, I plan to work on bringing in large assemblies, because I know a lot of customers have been asking about how to bring in large assemblies into Fusion to take advantage of some of the cloud computing tools, but also to do a large rendering. I have customers asking about, hey, I want to put this on a big 2 foot by 3 foot poster. Is that possible? And the Inventor rendering environment is great and all. I think Fusion can do a little bit better in the rendering realm. So people might want to bring over a large assembly from Inventor over to Fusion. So the Fusion, and I'm just gonna give the answer for that. So Fusion does have a 4,000 pixel by 4,000 pixel rendering capability, and to do a 2 foot by 3 foot one with 4,000 by 4,000, that means you could do a 2 foot by 2 foot poster board essentially. So I'll be diving into the extents of the capabilities of rendering and handling large assemblies in Fusion that following month. So definitely watch out for that. And yeah, there is Maya. If you're trying to go down even further down that path, there is Maya, which has essentially unlimited sizing of what you can render. But I'm not going to head down that rabbit hole there. So if anyone has any questions, I'll hang on for another 20-30 seconds or so. I don't see anything coming in the chat. But yeah, let me know, or you can let me know later offline. brian.monkelpunsuk@ketiv.com. I know that's hard to maybe hard to type out email, but definitely reach out to me when you do have questions or comments of what you'd like to see moving forward. All right. So thanks everyone for joining me today. I hope this was helpful and helped you learn something new for drawings inside of Fusion 360 here. And I look forward to seeing you next month.